The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the Director of Advocacy at Children's Health Defense and joined by the remarkable Mary Holland, CEO of Children's Health Defense. And welcome to This Week. I am sitting in once again for Polly Tommy. She will be back next week. So sadly, this is my last appearance here on This Week. But Mary, you're joining us from an interesting remote location. Why don't you tell us about that?
I am indeed. Great to have you with us, Michael. Thank you so much for filling in. And I am in Alaska with Friends of Children's Health Defense. I am speaking at Alaskans for Personal Freedom annual conference, and very excited to be here. It's my first time in Alaska. Oh my gosh, an incredible place. And I'll report back next week with Polly.
Very cool. Very cool. Can't wait to hear about that. We have a lot of headlines right now for this week. Let's get right into it. OSHA lied. This is an exclusive from the Defender. Amazing reporting. OSHA admitted on the record it told healthcare employers not to report COVID vaccine injuries. Talk to us about this one, Mary.
You know, this is criminal. I want us to refer this over to Department of Justice. This needs to get thoroughly investigated. So a whistleblower reached out to CHD to say that there were these official communications from the Occupational Safety and Health Agency to employers to say, you know what, you don't really have to report COVID vaccine injuries. You have to report cases of COVID based on a faulty test, the PCR, but you don't have to report injuries. Not only did that violate federal and state law, you have to report vaccine injuries under VAERS. I believe there was also money that was changed hand with the federal government that said you had to account for vaccine injuries, but it undermined the health and welfare of American workers. And as you know, Michael, as a worker, as an employee who lost his job over the COVID shots, this is inexcusable that OSHA would be telling employers do not report COVID vaccine injury. It's absolute total betrayal. And it ended, thankfully, with the Trump administration, but that was in effect. So OSHA was telling employers to report things like smallpox vaccine injuries, but don't report COVID vaccine injuries. It boggles my mind, and I really hope that Department of Justice will take this up, because this needs to be, there cannot be impunity for this. That cost people their lives, Michael. That cost people their lives.
And what's so remarkable about this piece is, yeah, there was a whistleblower that got the information to the Defender, but when Defender made the phone calls, OSHA fessed up. They said, yeah, that's correct. We did that. So they have admitted it. And I agree with you. The DOJ needs to investigate this. Our next headline, the current acting head of the CDC calls for the breakup of the MMR vaccine. As you know, as most of our viewers know, Mary, the MMR is a 3-shot combo. You can only get it as a 3-shot combo. But now, after President Trump brought this up, we're having the acting head of the CDC say, yes, there should be more choice. These should be broken up. What do you think about this?
Michael, we've long known that combination shots are more dangerous than single shots. That's pretty commonsensical, right? And so many of the autistic regressions in children happen after MMR. That's what happened to my son. That's what happened to Polly's son. That's what happened to Brian's son. We know that this is a pretty commonplace occurrence. So this is common sense based in science that there should be single vaccines available. After the whole controversy started and Dr. Andrew Wakefield recommended that there be single shots, and that people take single shots. He didn't say don't get vaccinated. He just said take single shots. That's when Merck and others made single shots unavailable. Of course, it's possible to manufacture them singly. And I am very delighted that Jim O'Neill at CDC said to the manufacturers, make safe monovalent vaccines. And that's basically echoing what President Trump said in his press conference about autism and Tylenol. You know, and the reason that they stopped making them singly Michael, was really related to patent issues and I believe liability issues, because it is much clearer that combination shots cause injuries than single shots. Same thing for DTaP and DTP. And they're telling people, well, same thing. The combination shots are much more problematic than single shots. Not that any of them have been robustly tested for safety, but
Right.
the combination shots are just not anything you would ever encounter in nature. You would not naturally encounter 3 infectious diseases, viral diseases at once. That's just not how the world works. So it makes sense, and I'm really grateful for this.
You know, after Kennedy and Trump fired Dr. Susan Minares heading the CDC, and we see the acting director, Jim O'Neill, come in, we've seen a real alignment seem to happen among the agencies, where the Make America Healthy Again agenda really seems to be moving forward in all of the health agencies now. Hopefully that is the case, and it continues to go in that direction, despite all of the pushback. We know not everyone's making America healthy again in the federal health agencies. There's still a lot of battles going on there. Peter Marks now works for Eli Lilly. Dr. Peter Marks was with the FDA and also was actually, I don't know if he was fired or he resigned, but he is no longer with the FDA. He is now where he properly probably belongs, over on the big pharma side. And working for Eli Lilly. Talk to us about this.
Peter Marks was a nemesis during COVID, Michael, and I really urge people to watch the Zoom videos of him in the film Follow the Silenced. So that's a film about people in React 19, particularly Brianne Dressen, and what happened to her. And she had direct video footage of Peter Marks. And that guy was just obfuscating the question, saying, oh, I'll get back to you. I mean, it is just absolutely clear now, in the context that he's gone to pharma, that he always wanted to preserve that sinecure, that, you know, when he left FDA, he would be going right to his buddies at pharma, no doubt making millions of dollars. He was Bobby Kennedy, in his role as HHS secretary, basically, I think, said either get on board or get out. And he got out, and he was nasty on the morning news shows. And exactly what you said, he is in the cesspool of big pharma where he belongs.
You know, it's interesting. A good friend of mine, Tia Severino in Georgia, just told me that Peter Marks will be at Emory College on November 5th for the premiere of a documentary called Rebuilding Vaccine Confidence. So right as he's working for Eli Lilly, he's coming to the colleges there in Georgia. Tickets are available to the public. Anybody can go and watch that. So stay tuned to CHD TV, and the Defender will be getting you information about that event. Maybe some of our people should go and watch that documentary, ask a question to Peter Marks. So Surgeon Generals have been coming out in an RFK Jr. smear campaign. I believe we have a total of 6 Surgeon Generals that are attacking the current head of HHS. Talk to us about this, Mary.
So this is a part of a very concerted effort to get Bobby Kennedy out of his job at HHS secretary. And we talked about a leaked memo back in April from the biopharmaceutical lobbying group Bio, that they were spending $2 million to try to get Bobby out by the end of September. Now we're into phase 2 overdrive. And to the general public, Michael, this looks, you know, as if it might be bipartisan. These are surgeon generals from 2 different administrations. You know, they're sort of suggesting he's a threat. He's an unprecedented threat. And they're blaming on him a measles outbreak in West Texas and a shooting at the CDC, things that are ridiculous. They're conflating his calls for transparency with anti-science extremism. The reality is, as Sayer G. and Ben Tapper point out in this article, these 6 people across Republican and Democratic administrations are protecting a $2 trillion health bureaucracy. They all presided over this precipitous increase in chronic disease among all Americans. Over half of all Americans have chronic disease. People should not be taking these people as the truth tellers about Bobby Kennedy. On the contrary, they should be understanding that Bobby is up against all of them, and that in particular, Vivek Murthy, the most recent Surgeon General, he advocated explicitly advocated censorship, and he is a defendant in one of our lawsuits, CHD versus, or rather, Bobby Kennedy v. Biden, which is now called CHD versus Trump. So they were not advocating for health; they were about protecting profits.
You know, one of the comebacks that always floors everybody every time Secretary Kennedy does it is when he says, Senator, you've been sitting there for 20 or 30 years. You presided over the decline of the healthiest nation in the world to the least healthiest nation. And I have to say, even people against Bobby Kennedy, that gives everybody pause. Thank God for that. Thank God there's some sense and people are realizing, yeah, how come we are the sickest nation in the world? Next headline from the Defender, PrEP Act lawsuit dismissed. So far, every legal action attempted against the PrEP Act is proving ironclad. Let people know what the PrEP Act is and what just happened here.
So the PrEP Act is what made COVID possible, Michael.
Right.
The PrEP Act is from 2005. It was passed after 9/11. It's called the Public Readiness and Preparedness Act. And it basically says that in the event of any biological, chemical, nuclear, or radiological emergency, in essence, they can throw the Constitution out the window. And in its own backdoor way, this seems to be an admission that the COVID-19 virus was a biological weapon, because you only get to invoke these PrEP Act declarations, which the then Secretary of HHS did. You get to do that in the case of these kinds of emergencies. So basically, when this happens, you throw the Constitution out the window, and basically everything becomes a medical countermeasure: the masks, the shots, the drugs, and the government, the manufacturers, the healthcare practitioners are all literally immune from any kind of prosecution, from any kind of knowledge requirement. They just have to think it might be effective, and that's that. You can't sue them directly. You have to go to this truly kangaroo court countermeasures injury compensation program. When this case was filed on behalf of victims in React 19, 4 people had been compensated in 2023. As Dr. Joel Walskog, one of the founders of React 19, a physician who was severely injured by his COVID shot, said it's beyond disappointing. But we at Children's Health Defense are challenging the PrEP Act. Aaron Siri on behalf of ICANN is challenging. Jeff Childers is challenging. This is by far not over. We are not stopping, because unless we overturn the PrEP Act, Michael, through the courts or through Congress, this will happen again. There will be other COVIDs, whether it's for a climate emergency or a biological weapons attack or an alien invasion or, a deadly virus. You can be sure, as Bobby Kennedy used to say on the ramparts, any power that you give to the government ultimately will be abused. They have this power to shut down the world under this 2005 PrEP Act. Analogs have been adopted around the world. We have to take this back. It is critical.
Yeah, hopefully one of the lawsuits will find the silver bullet to take out the PrEP Act. But also, we do have Congressman Massey, who has recently introduced legislation to repeal the PrEP Act. And we will, at CHD Advocacy, CHD TV Defender, we will have updates on that very, very soon.
Yes, kudos to Tom Massey for introducing a bill. I don't know that there's a lot of co-sponsors yet, but the PrEP Act is absolutely unconstitutional. All of these lawsuits are alleging that. This case, like many others related to COVID, was thrown out on standing grounds, which is a cover, frankly. But the PrEP Act was drafted in such a way that it is extremely difficult to challenge its unconstitutionality. But rest assured that we and our colleagues in the legal part of the health freedom movement are working on this every day, because we cannot let the PrEP Act stand.
100%. Autism or brain injury. This is really important. Redefining brain injury as autism, a strategy to conceal vaccine harms. This is a fascinating article and thesis. Talk to us about this.
Well, this is an article that was reprinted by Dr. McCullough from the Midwestern Doctor, and I'm happy that we republished this again in CHD's Defender. So I completely agree with this thesis that the term autism, which effectively in part replaced the term mentally retarded that became very unfashionable and considered derogatory. Autism is an inherently vague behavioral diagnosis with no science backing it up except literally a morphing Chinese menu of symptoms under the Psychiatric Association's definition book, DSM. And autism is a form of brain injury. So I, with co-authors, analyze cases of compensated encephalopathy and seizure disorder from the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program back in 2011, and we called it vaccine-induced brain injury. And so I could not agree more with the author here that we have to get back to calling things what they are, and that is that autism are behavioral symptoms of brain injury, which is called brain injury or encephalitis or encephalopathy. And as this article points out, vaccinated children are 3 to 7 times more likely than unvaccinated children to be suffering from some kind of chronic disease. And what the vaccines don't cause autism is mere propaganda. This article points to a fabulous new book that, by Gavin DeBecker, Forbidden Facts. I interviewed him here on CHD TV. I highly recommend it. The Academy of Medicine, now called the National Academy, is frankly a gun for hire by the government, by corporations, and they were hired to whitewash Agent Orange, whitewash sudden infant death syndrome, whitewash Gulf War syndrome, and they did exactly the same thing with autism. And Gavin DeBecker's review of the leaked transcripts from these meetings when they were whitewashing vaccines cause it's hilarious. If you can make it hilarious, which is no mean feat, but he makes it hilarious how ridiculous their deliberations were. The only thing they were deliberating on was how do we obscure the fact that vaccines do cause autism. And so I'm very grateful to President Trump and to Bobby Kennedy for highlighting this in their recent press conference. As Bobby Kennedy said in that press conference, 40 to 70% of children who regress into autism, their parents report that it was due to vaccines. So enough said. It's brain injury.
Some good news. A cell tower project has been blocked. A Sitka resident blocked cell tower project with help from CHD's Stop 5G initiative. Some good news. It's good to have some good news.
It's great. This is great news, and I'm excited, Michael. I'm going to meet some of these people from the Sitkans for Safe Tech while I'm here in Alaska and hear more about their advocacy efforts that led to this really fabulous win. They blocked a 120-foot cell tower in a residential area. This is a community that's been very focused on scenic value, on the environment, on safety. They've also been focused on the threat of landslides because there's a lot of mountains there. This was a ruling by an administrative law judge that the Telecommunications Act of 1996 did not apply at all, and that they were subject to ordinances and laws of the state and the local jurisdiction, and that in any event, this network setting up this cell tower had not even evaluated whether a 35-foot tower would meet their needs. And so this is really a great model. Our group, Stop 5G Initiative, helped them. They have said they could not have done this without that sort of outside legal and advocacy support. And we have 11 communities right now, Michael, that are working with our Stop 5G Initiative. And we encourage other communities that are facing these cell towers to reach out to Stop 5G, which is available as a separate website right there, stop5g.org. We want to help communities push back against this proliferating, unchecked, unregulated proliferation of cell towers that absolutely create hazardous radiation, especially for children. They should not be in residential areas, full stop.
Yeah, it's such an important issue. And children's health defense, we're really leading the way nationally, even internationally, with pushing back on everything that's happening with EMR pollution. I don't know if it's as bad as vaccines. I don't know exactly how to categorize it, but it is definitely a pollution of our time that must be dealt with. This is a fascinating report. I can't stop watching this one. 60 Minutes reports on the vaccine court for 13 minutes. This blew me away, Mary. I had the pleasure of talking to Dr. Merrill Nass on this past Tuesday about this. We watched it and stopped and broke it down because there's some great things that happened here. There's some lies that happened here. But what cannot be argued is mainstream media just pivoted major league from vaccines are safe and effective to, well, every once in a while someone gets hurt, and thank God we have this court. Talk to us about this.
Michael, I mean, they've always sort of, even Paul Offit and Peter Hotez have always sort of said, yeah, oh, in the rarest of cases, yeah, maybe, there's like bruising at the injection site. I mean, they've always said this, but this did interview families who had profound injuries. They did interview a boy who'd had a severe injury from a DPT shot. They did interview an adult who had a severe autoimmune disease develop after vaccination. And that's the good news, as you say. But the bad news is the lies that they perpetrated, that vaccines have saved 154 million people. I have to tell you, Ron Johnson, in his hearing at the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, just demolished that 154 million lives saved. It was great to watch. We should actually put those two up. Compensation is easy and fair. Yeah, no. This compensation program proved that vaccines don't cause autism. No, it was fraudulent. I love the quote in this from our dear friend Wayne Rohde, and true expert on the injury compensation programs. He said, getting compensations from the injury compensation program is like climbing Mount Everest without oxygen and ropes, i.e. it is all but impossible. And that's the truth. I am quoted in this article. Secretary Kennedy is exactly right to be reforming this program because it has a pro-government bias, it lacks procedural safeguards, and it has crushing delays. Reform is woefully overdue.
Yeah, and we had 60 Minutes trying to get ahead of the narrative, saying, whoa, we must protect this court. Don't believe what's about to come out from the federal health agencies. Don't believe your lying eyes. I can't stop thinking about that one and looking back at that one. Here's definitely an interesting one for our community. The Maha movement is not happy with the Trump deal with Pfizer. So we just saw this happen where there is a deal to try to bring down the prices for generic drugs in the United States. There is definitely some good there, but a lot of people seeing Trump and others, with the CEO of Pfizer, slapping each other on the back. It was definitely hard for members of our movement to take in. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, myself included, Michael. So like this past story with 60 Minutes, it's good news, bad news. It's very mixed. So it is good to lower prices for Americans. Americans pay too much for their drugs. They pay 10 times what people are paying in Western Europe and Canada due to the Bush administration saying we will not negotiate prices. That's ridiculous. So Trump, being a negotiator, said, no, we're going to get low prices and we're going to start with Pfizer, and Pfizer's going to have to pony up and they're going to invest $70 billion. And that's positive. But the negative is we want to end the unholy alliance between big pharma and government. And we also want to end the mRNA shots. And basically what Bourla was talking about, the CEO of Pfizer, without saying so directly, is we're going to invest in plants to develop more mRNA technology. He talked specifically about vaccines. We know that mRNA is what they want to do. So that was really a punch in the gut, frankly. And I have to say, I didn't think that Secretary Kennedy looked all too happy when they were backslapping there and, calling one another, my best friend, blah, blah, blah. I think we have to watch it really carefully, Michael. I think there's probably a lot going on behind the scenes that may be very favorable. And maybe this was just for appearances, but we do not agree that there should be a tight collaboration of public-private partnerships between big pharma and governments around the world. That is what led us to COVID, and that cannot continue if we're to enjoy real health freedom.
Informed consent is back. This headline from the Defender says new COVID vaccine recommendations give families more say. What do you think about this?
This is great, right? So everything should be individual decision making, Michael. There's no such thing as safe population medicine that maximizes profits, not health, as Karl Jablonowski says here. This is basically they've changed their recommendation on MMRV, which is even more toxic than MMR that we just heard Jim O'Neill's walking back. And he said, Karl Jablonowski on our science staff says, this is a victory for common sense and precautionary medicine. So there's signs here that things are going in the right direction. There's still a long way to go, Michael.
CDC fumbled safety monitoring of the COVID shots. We're seeing some new good things from CDC now, but certainly not all, and especially when we look in the rear view mirror. Talk to us about this one, Mary.
Michael, this is another mixed one, but I think the bad outweighs the good here. So the CDC is now saying, oh, gee, I guess maybe we didn't do as well as we could have. Our immunization safety office was a little behind the curve. So it's like this limited hangout, frankly. They're saying, oh, we made little mistakes. No, they killed people. And so as Brian Hooker says, it's too little, too late, our head of science, and it doesn't go nearly far enough. He said it was a word salad. And to me, what's most significant here, Michael, is that this committee was headed by Kathleen Stratton. Kathleen Stratton was the lady who oversaw the committee finding that vaccines don't cause autism. So in my view now, she was hired, National Academy of Sciences, she was hired for this whitewash. She was hired for this limited hangout. This is bad news. I am really hopeful that Jim O'Neill, as the acting director, or whoever becomes the permanent director of CDC, will smoke out people like Kathleen Stratton and never hire them again for anything. If anything, they should be investigated. The one good thing about their reports, Michael, is that they did say the Immunization Safety Office should be completely separate from the CDC's promotional function for vaccines. Yeah, we've been saying that for 25 years. But the other good thing here is that Peter McCullough, prominent doctor in our space, says that a truly independent immunization safety officer would have said within a month of their rollout in December 2020 that they should be recalled from the marketplace, because the reports were out immediately that they were causing literally over 1,000 deaths within 1 month. So, the bad there outweighs the good in that we have got to get rid of these liars from any role at CDC. And I am confident that that is on the agenda for people like Jim O'Neill and Bobby Kennedy.
I mean, I think we're seeing it for sure. We're seeing that there is a cleaning house taking place. Not fast enough for all of us, right? You want to see everything happen yesterday, but I do have confidence in what's happening at the federal health agencies right now. The evidence really seems to be showing that. This next headline is really disturbing, from the New York Times, showing that a video on COVID vaccines for pregnant women peddles fear, not science, saying, of course, these are safe for pregnant women. I could just hear my friend Naomi Wolf shrieking and going nuts over this when her and her team did a deep dive into the Pfizer papers, where there was information found on the dangers of pregnant women and fetuses with the COVID shot. Talk to us about this one, please.
This is a fantastic article. I am so proud of our science team that pulled this together. So they not only take down this absurd, blood on its hands New York Times video recommending that pregnant women effectively get COVID shots, in flying in the face of mountains of science, but it actually walks you through what is the science that shows that these products are absolutely unsafe for women who are pregnant, and that there is a very high rate of miscarriage and a very high rate of stillborns for women who got these in their first and second trimesters. They say what the New York Times should have said, and I have just been communicating with the team, Michael. I really want us to get this out in shortened form on social media, because no pregnant woman should be under the misimpression that the science says that it's safe to take a COVID shot. That's not what the science says at all. And this is just a blatant misrepresentation. These are lies, and it's shameful. It is truly shameful at this point, 5 years out for the New York Times to be purveying these kinds of lies to pregnant women. It is honestly, they have blood on their hands.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just one of the It's just one of those things you just think wouldn't happen, couldn't happen, that they wouldn't possibly lie to pregnant women, to unborn babies. Yeah, that they will and they do. That's the system that we're facing on a regular basis. NIH quietly approved risky Wuhan experiments. Talk to us about this, Mary.
Well, this is another one. This is great. This is our friends at US Right to Know. So they got very early FOIA, Freedom of Information Act emails. And they're basically showing that people at NIAID, Tony Fauci's agency, were saying, this research you want to do at Wuhan Institute through money that we're sending to EcoHealth Alliance, to Peter Daszak, it's all good. It's not really gain of function when it's clearly gain of function research, i.e. making viruses more infective and more lethal to humans. But what's truly shocking to me about this article, Michael, something I didn't know, Peter Daszak has closed down EcoHealth Alliance, and he has opened something called Nature Health Global. This guy is still at it, and he is still trying to get money from the federal government. So the guy who's now head of NIAID, a protege of Tony Fauci, Dr. Taubenberger, recently told Jay Bhattacharya, head of NIH, of which NIAID is a part, he says, it's not a simple black and white issue of what constitutes gain of function research. Well-informed, reasonable people would fall on both sides of that line, no matter where it hits. No, I don't think so. If you take 50 members of the public and you tell them about this research, you will not find that people are so conflicted about doing research that increases the infectivity and the deadliness of viruses. And so this article kind of concludes that there's really apparently at this moment a lack of institutional urgency to end this gain of function research, Michael. And Bobby Kennedy's book, The Wuhan Cover-Up, which he did at Children's Health Defense before he became secretary, it is urgent. We have to end this bioweapons arms race that is in fact terrifying. And this article makes clear to me we've got a ways to go on that one too.
So Peter Daszak just rebranded, and is now coming with his cups out to the federal government. What I did was fine.
Nature Health Global. You can't make it up, Michael.
He was defunded. EcoHealth Alliance was defunded by the Biden administration. That was before Trump had taken office.
Yeah, at the very end of the Biden administration.
The very end.
Great hoo-ha, yes.
But Mary, nevertheless, that kind of underlines just how bad that situation was. But here he is again with a new brand.
Yep. Nature Health Global. Go to the website. This guy is still out there peddling his bioweapons. This guy is still out there peddling bioweapons for money.
We'll make sure to have that link in the show notes here. The Next Defender headline shows that the AIDS playbook and the COVID playbook are kind of the same playbook. Plague, terror, fear and profit drove AIDS and COVID responses, filmmaker tells CHD TV. This was a really great interview and a really great story, Mary.
So Joan Shenton is a former BBC reporter who went on to make documentaries over 30 years, not only about AIDS, but about other medical scams, including about the Gardasil vaccine, the HPV vaccine. And we're now showing one of her films every month for the next several months. And so we broadcast this past Monday, Positively False, Birth of a Heresy. It's available on CHD TV. It's a fantastic documentary covering about 20 years of the AIDS, what I now truly believe was a scam, largely. And it's very similar to COVID. It's the same people. It's Tony Fauci. It's NIAID. It's a deadly virus. You have to use a PCR test. You go to a hospital and you get a deadly drug, AZT, very analogous to remdesivir. It was a really great interview. I'm very proud that Joan has not only made all of her movies available to us at CHD, and we will be rolling them out and talking about them, but in 2026, we will put up online an archive of her materials about AIDS that she collected over 30 years. This is really worth watching to understand the playbook and understand the people behind it. It was, I'm really excited that we're doing this.
Yeah, I'm excited about that as well, too, for sure. Sometimes people have a hard time really grappling with the lies that surrounded HIV and AIDS. You have to jump into it, because just like you said, when you start to see, oh my God, it was Tony Fauci. Oh my God, there was only one drug you were allowed to use. Oh my God, that drug started killing people. There is so many similarities. It's a rabbit hole you have to go down if you really do want to know.
Well, we're going to keep people going down it, Michael. So if you're tuned into CHD TV, you will be getting a full dose.
Gene-edited tomatoes might boost vitamin D levels, but does that mean they are still safe to eat? Talk to us about these GMOs, Mary.
So this is a great article from, GM Watch, genetically modified. No, there's no clinical trials that show this is going to work. They're doing a 21-day marketing exercise in the UK. They're putting these genetically modified tomatoes in this ultra-processed soup. The article concludes, just go buy your D3 supplements. We have no idea what the long-term effects or even the short-term effects of this are going to be. Michael, like, you can't make this stuff up. Like, there are better ways to go make money, except unless you sort of implicate that there are nefarious purposes here. And it's hard not to come to that conclusion because it's so crazy.
Well, if you can make a GMO that does something great, like make vitamin D, you can also make them make their own poisons like they have them do and say, oh, this is making its own pesticide. It's the Frankenfood thing, right? It's like these Frankenstein experiments. How could that possibly be better than God and Mother Nature? But I don't know. Our last headline today, toxic air emissions and death. Groups appeal ruling that lets factory farms hide toxic air emissions that are linked to 12,700 deaths a year. Talk to us about this headline.
So apparently in a federal district court, groups, conservation groups, including Food and Water Watch and others, are appealing a decision that found that these factory farms, these CAFOs, these condensed farming operations, they don't have to tell the people in the area that they're emitting ammonia or they're emitting other hydrogen sulfide, very toxic air pollutants. And as you said, they seem to be associated with deaths. They're being represented by Earth Justice. And this article says, I think accurately, that this is a betrayal of the Make America Healthy Again movement, and it's a betrayal of farming communities in particular. I would point out that even Waterkeeper Alliance that Robert Kennedy founded is one of the plaintiffs here being represented by Earth Justice against the Environmental Protection Agency. So, it's very tough being in government, right? There's lots of compromises that have to be made between people who are running businesses and people who want protections. But this is about transparency. This is not stopping those emissions. It's about saying that you have to tell people that you're about to pollute the air with ammonia so that if you're sensitive, you can not be in that area or not be outside that day. So this is disappointing. I'm very glad that this coalition of groups is appealing that decision.
Yeah, we're seeing some amazing things happen at the federal health agencies. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s MAHA agenda is just trailblazing change I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. We're not necessarily seeing that in every single agency. I'm sorry, not every leader is Bobby Kennedy, and
For sure.
Yeah.
But they're appealing, and we're giving them voice, and it's not over. I mean, none of this is over, but we definitely have to stay the course because it's going to be bumpy as it is, right? We just talked about the 6 surgeon generals who are coming after Kennedy, and that was followed immediately in the article. They point out by 2 psychiatric associations. I mean, they're not going to stop trying to get rid of Bobby Kennedy because they know he really does want whole scale change in the system. The system is deeply, deeply corrupt.
Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the worst nightmare of big pharma and all big ag, big industry that are trying to pollute and to hurt us.
It's not too late to sign up for our amazing conference, November 7 to 9. I just mentioned the writer Gavin DeBecker. He's a late sign up. It's going to be an amazing conference. Sign up. Only general admission is available at the moment, but it's going to be fabulous. So if you possibly can, I urge you to.
Sadly, this is my ending of my stand-in here for the legendary Polly Tommy.
Polly would have us say, pray big, stand firm, never settle, and we'll see you next week. Dane, you have said and put information on the website that ultraviolet type C waves are making it to the surface of the Earth, and that had not been the case in the past. Can you explain that to us? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, that's another form of cover-up. That by itself is an extremely near-term existential threat. Climate engineering operations are destroying the ozone layer. We've been told it's hairspray cans, hairspray aerosols. Is that a problem? Yes, but an absolutely minuscule problem in comparison to the climate engineering elephant in the equation. Not just the oxidative particles being dispersed in the atmosphere, but the frequency transmissions used to manipulate those particles also breaking down the ozone layer. Every single rocket launch does the same. There's many factors here, but climate engineering is the biggest by far. It's known that this would happen when they deployed, and they have 80 years ago. So we're metering UVC, again, part of the cover-up that's been so systematically built in for so many decades. The UV readings we get, Mary and Clayton, the official UV readings are completely fictitious. They only meter down to 300 nanometers, which is half the UVB spectrum, none of the UVC spectrum, so you can't disclose what you're not even metering for, can you?
UVC refers to a specific ultraviolet wavelength. UVC is ultraviolet light using wavelengths in the C range. The ultraviolet spectrum falls in between the visible light and X-ray on the electromagnetic spectrum. The ultraviolet spectrum is divided into categories of strength, which are determined by the wavelengths measured in nanometers. The three categories of UV are UVA, UVB, and UVC. Shorter wavelengths have more energy and thus are stronger. UVC has the energy to disinfect and destroy pathogens of all types, including viruses, bacteria, spores, and other microorganisms. UVC can be further subdivided into germicidal UV, far UVC, and vacuum UV.
So we're getting UVC in the surface. That's a DNA damaging spectrum. It's killing plankton, it's killing insects, insect populations globally down 80 to 90% right now. If the insect populations can't make it, how long do we think we're going to be here? It's affecting crops, forestry, everything. We cannot live without a functional ozone layer, and it is perilously near functional collapse right now.
Thanks, Dane. So Clayton, can you speak to this at all about sort of the issues around UVC light and sort of in general the issues of sun exposure before and after geoengineering? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about sunscreen or what people might be thinking about in this space.
When we look at a lot of the sun protection, whether it's sunglasses, whether it's sunscreen, whatever, a lot of that is really directed toward UVA and B. And so, the issues of us getting UVC and that other segment of the spectrum, UVB radiation, and we don't even oftentimes know that we're getting it, is something I'd really have to look into more. I can say that Dane's recent post on X was a big hit. It got about 1 million views when he was commenting on this, and I think that it really is something that people can identify with at a personal level. As we, that in a lot of cases the sun just feels different than it used to. It feels like even if it's 70 degrees where I'm at, the sun feels like it's just beating down on you. In a way that it didn't even a few years ago. I would ask Dane a real quick question: is the sulfur compounds? Is that would you say that's the single greatest geoengineering attack on the ozone layer, or is it the entire spectrum of what's being done?
There's many other oxidative particles as well, and again, given that peer-reviewed science study, published study, is implicating coal fly ash as a base material for these operations. So there's many elements there that are oxidative to the ozone layer. And again, the frequency transmissions, can't stress that enough. People that are correctly focused on the dangers of communications frequency transmissions, we hope also focus on the climate engineering frequency transmissions, which are 10 times or more stronger than the communications transmissions. And now we have another layer of that. As methane is building up in the atmosphere, and that's blamed on cow flatulence, again, to polarize populations and take their eye off the bigger problems, which are methane blowouts in the Arctic tundra area, seafloor, These are formerly frozen methane hydrate and clathrate fields that are literally exploding. In the case of the tundra, it explodes right into the atmosphere, it migrates through the air column, starts to spread out and cover the planet like a layer of glass. Seafloor blowouts are much larger still. This is the Bermuda Triangle scenario. That's why ships have been sinking for so many decades. Seabed methane deposits are thawing and releasing as they explode into the water column. It aerates that water column like a bottle of champagne. Any surface vessel above that has no buoyancy. It sinks to the bottom intact. Then it migrates into the air column, again, covering the planet like a layer of glass, trapping even more heat. And now they're microwaving the atmosphere with projects. There's 2 projects we know of, Project Lucy and Project Alamo. Those are acronyms for microwaving the atmosphere with opposing frequencies in the desperate and unimaginably dangerous attempt to molecularly degrade some of that methane. What's that doing to what's left of the ozone layer? Based on our readings with what was probably the world's top expert, he just passed away, but he worked for geoengineeringwatch.org, state-of-the-art equipment, 30% of the ozone layer remaining, not 30% gone, 30% remaining. Ponder that. And again, the frequency transmissions and the oxidative aerosols, biggest single factor in that equation.
Dane, do you want to give us any closing words, and then I'll come to you, Clayton?
I'm grateful to CHD for their voice, and grateful to Clayton for his voice and focus on how dangerous these particles are in our air column. And again, it's a team effort to sound the alarm. We need to sound the alarm. The only way forward in this fight is to reach a critical mass of awareness so that those participating, including our military brothers and sisters, understand they're literally participating in their own demise. We would argue that's the only way we can stop this. No administration, including this one, has done anything but try to cover this issue up. It's up to us.
Thanks, Dane. Clayton?
I would agree with him. I think it has to come from the grassroots. We have to say this has to stop. It has to stop now. I'm a bit encouraged by, I think, what seems to be an increase in awareness. I think that, and I do see, even though I think Dane is right, that administration is not going to stop this. We're going to have to make them stop. We're going to have to insist that they stop. That said, I do see at least some openings where this is being acknowledged, whereas it was completely denied in the past. So I do see progress. Is it going to be fast enough? I don't know. I think we all have to work.
We're live. Okay, so can you tell us your name, please?
Yes, my name is Dale Robinson, and I live in Tallahassee, Florida.
Yes, that's where we are today. Now, you are a retired nurse, RN, correct?
That's correct.
Could you tell us what kind of a nurse you were?
Well, I did elder care, psych, and a little bit of children's health.
Okay, and you want to talk about your experience going through the COVID era, as we now call it. So tell us from your perspective.
Well, it really started in 2020 when COVID was starting to make the rounds, and I started out. I was retired by then. I was not working as a registered nurse at that time, but had a few years of retirement prior to that year 2020. And I started trying to inform my friends about why I wasn't interested in the vaccine, that I was more interested in natural immunity. I'd rather go ahead and get COVID and just kind of get the natural immunity to it, which I had been reading was a very effective way of dealing with the with COVID and COVID-SARS infection. So having worked for 35 years as a registered nurse, I had my own judgments about flu vaccines and other vaccines in the past, but I was really not real happy with the COVID vaccine because it was warp speed, and it just seemed like it was way too fast, and I didn't like the way it was rolled out. I didn't like the messages. They were changing a lot. And it seemed kind of reactive approach, And then I started really drilling down on all the different remedies and treatments that one could use to both protect themselves from COVID and to, if you did, get the vaccine, how you could help yourself even with that if you had a side effect. And what we found was that our friends didn't want to talk to us about that, and they really didn't want us to come around if we weren't vaccinated. Many a event happened where they said, if you're not vaccinated, please don't come. And we were like, okay, well, that's that, we can't go. And anytime we brought the subject up or tried to have a discussion or even send information to our friends, they would say, I'm good, something like that, or not even respond at all. Like they really didn't want to hear about it. So, which was very strange, because usually we're on the same page both politically and socially with a lot of our friends, and we thought, well, yeah, they're gonna understand this, and we can have a discussion about it and maybe debate the pros and cons. But it just wasn't the case. Very few people even wanted to talk about it, and they were really in the mindset of, I'd rather forget about it than try to take any kind of concerted strategy or effort to find out what was going on. Also, what happened during COVID, right up until now, and it's still happening now, is I had a brother who had myocarditis, came out of nowhere after his vaccines. My wife's sister had Bell's palsy, and we were starting to hear all these stories about, neurological problems, heart problems, immune system problems, a lot of stuff like that really concerned me. And we heard more and more stories, and people we were talking to, they'd talk about long COVID, and they'd talk about, I've had this adverse effect after I got the vaccine. I had a reaction to the vaccine. I didn't feel good. My neighbor just told me 2 weeks ago, he said, ever since I got the vaccines, I haven't felt right. And this is a guy who's really healthy. And a 75-year-old. And I said, well, Paul, what do you think it was? He said, well, all I can think of is that after the vaccines, I never felt right. So even that statement 2 weeks ago, which he finally told me, and he's my next door neighbor, we've tried to have conversations about it before, but never really got much information from him. Because what we thought basically was once somebody was vaccinated, they really didn't want to talk about it. That was our impression. They just wanted it to go away, shut it down, forget it, and that's good. If you, in my opinion, if you want to have your head in the sand, but it's not a good way of having a constructive debate about the pros and cons of the vaccine. There's a long history. It's starting to come out, and you can see how the dots are connected to where we are today. So we're really informed through, Mercola, Malone, Team Kennedy, and of course CHD, which we've been very supportive of since we found out, all the things that you were doing. The only other thing I can say is that we're very disappointed with the current government stand, and I wasn't too happy when Trump was doing the warp speed for the vaccine either. Definitely had a complete turnaround with Dr. Fauci. At first I thought Dr. Fauci knew what he was talking about and maybe was trying to at least help people through a difficult time, but I now realize that there's a whole lot more to that story. So having read The Real Anthony Fauci by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. really helped me understand why I needed to rethink Dr. Fauci's whole thing. And of course, we're very interested in that none of these guys will stand up and talk about it now. They won't debate anybody. We're not seeing this information on the news. As a matter of fact, the news is full of the pharmacies pushing more and more vaccines, and we're seeing just more and more problems with people having side effects to the vaccines and to getting serious harm long term, it appears. It's already happened in my family and in my wife's family, and we know other people who have ongoing issues. So,
Do you think that people like your neighbour and some of these people you've spoken about, do you think they're starting to put two and two together? Do you think that we're getting there with them, or do you think some people are just never going to get it?
yeah, well, I'm an optimist thinking that people are going to put it together, that eventually with the information coming out and more people talking about it, and that's why I'm here to share my thoughts on it. Yeah, I think they will eventually get it, but it's a slow process because the media is just pounding us with more and more information about why you should be vaccinated and how important it is, and the childhood immunization schedule is just, it's just off the chain. They've got just way too many things going on trying to push these vaccinations, and I think they need to rethink that and look at the history, look at the data, and come to a conclusion. Yes, I'm optimistic that people will eventually hear it.
One of the most powerful things that we're seeing on this tour is your profession, the nurses coming and sitting where you are now, and especially the ones that worked during COVID in the ICU and stuff. They're so brave and they're speaking so well about the horrors of what really happened in the hospitals during COVID.
Yeah.
But they all say the same thing, that there's so many that could come out, obviously, and speak. What do you think they're afraid of?
Well, a lot of them are afraid of their jobs. They're afraid of their income, the choices that they would have to make when the powers that be come down on them for having any questions about the current narrative that vaccines are good for you, and that the treatments for COVID are one way and one way only. I mean, this is obviously not a fact. It's obviously not helpful. It's obviously, people are afraid. So because of that fear, they're probably, a lot of them aren't going to come out and say much. And we know a lot of people who were forced to be take the vaccine, especially if they were working for the federal government or subcontracted by the government. They had no choice. They was either, take the vaccine or you lose your 401 and you lose your everything that you've worked for all these years. And we had a lot of people telling us that was the case for them, that they were forced to take it and didn't have any choice, but wished that they didn't have to do it.
So now you did not take the shot.
No, I am unvaccinated.
Did you get the so-called COVID?
I did. I got it once for sure. Well, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because you want to test.
I
right?
didn't want to test, of course. I didn't want to put those chemicals in. My wife got it also, and she tested positive for hers, and then I got it from her. And so I had it at least once, maybe twice. And it wasn't fun. It was 2 weeks of hell, and then it was over.
Because you're alive. Do you have myocarditis?
No.
Do you have any paralysis anywhere? Tremors?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's like doing the vax on vax study all over again.
Yes. No, we were really lucky, and I think it's because we live a very healthy lifestyle and pay attention to medicines and pharmaceuticals, and having worked in that field for so long, it just gave me an insight that we needed to be really careful. And fortunately we were retired, so we weren't put in a situation where we were forced by our job to take the COVID vaccines.
Is there anything else you want to say to the people listening to you right now?
Just that I really appreciate everything that anyone does to stand up and try to talk about it in a way that would open people's minds to the possibility that we've been told untruths, that we've been harassed, and basically not given the opportunity to make our own decisions public, let alone with our friends. I just think that I admire anyone who would take the time to stand up and speak what their experience was, and to get in touch with other people, our lawmakers and people in different situations that have gone through different scenarios of this whole COVID experience. But I really appreciate the people like yourselves, like CHD, like what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has done and is continuing to do. I appreciate Mercola. I appreciate Malone. I don't agree with everything that everybody's saying all the time, but I like that I'm getting information that I normally will not ever hear on mainstream media. So I appreciate you all for everything that you do, and I really would like to let people know if they're hurting with side effects to COVID or long-term effects to COVID, you can turn it around. You just need to probably listen to what some of the people like Dr. McCullough has to say and look at the different treatment protocols and regimens that they're recommending, because I think they will help people, and there's a good chance that you can get over any side effect to this vaccine.
Well, thank you so much for sitting there and talking to us and your words of wisdom. We truly appreciate you making the effort to come here today.
Thank you very much.
Some 40 to 70% of mothers who have children with autism believe that their child was injured by a vaccine. We should be listening to these mothers. We will perform the studies that should have been performed 25 years ago.
This is the most important thing. There's nothing more important than that.
This guy is staking his presidency on ending the autism epidemic, and he talked about vaccines.
We want no mercury in the vaccine. We want no aluminum in the vaccine.
We didn't know if he was actually going to touch on vaccines, and he was all over it.
There's no reason to give a baby that's almost just born hepatitis B.
He basically gave parents permission not to vaccinate their kids and definitely not to take Tylenol.
We now have data we cannot ignore. There is a causal relationship between prenatal acetaminophen use and neurodevelopmental disorders of ADHD and autism spectrum disorder.
The truth is, vaccine injuries are real and they've been ignored.
Society does not want to acknowledge vaccine injury, period.
These childhood vaccinations, the people of America are telling us they are not safe and effective. We are seriously concerned at Children's Health Defense about the disinformation and misinformation out there.
The government has decided that this particular industry doesn't have to be liable to anybody.
There's only 10% of children are complying with the CDC's recommendation on COVID boosters.
A record number of kindergartners didn't get at least one state-mandated vaccine.
And the number of exemptions is up. Vaccination rates in children start to drop once again.
A 16-year-old girl wins in court after the public school system denied her medical vaccine exemption.
The nonprofit Children's Health Defense has championed her case.
Sarah Doe is going to be going to
Health and Human Services is reestablishing the task force on safer childhood vaccines. This comes after a lawsuit from an advocacy group formerly led by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.